Welcome, everybody. Super good to see you this evening. We're going to give it a minute or so as our amazing hostess with the mostest, Assistant Principal Jill Little, works through getting everyone admitted to the meeting. So just one moment. And Jill, will you let me know when you think we're ready to go?
I will let you know.
Sweet.
This new admit all button is pretty magical, Tanya.
This is our first time using Zoom for our Tabor Talk presentation. We feel like we had Google Meet down and we decided to challenge ourselves this evening with a completely different technological platform. So if we make it look like we don't know what we're doing, that's probably honest and true for the moment. So bear with us. I am putting a link in the chat as well to tonight's presentation. Hopefully I managed to do the sharing settings correctly, but there are some links to resources that y'all might want to reference later in regards to bell schedules and those sorts of things. So I just wanted to make sure that you had it as a reference.
I think you could go ahead and get started, Tanya.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to our first Tabor Talk of the 2021-22 school year. I am Tanya Arnold, the proud principal here at Mount Tabor Middle School. And while it feels kind of weird to be virtual again with our families, I'm really grateful that you guys took time out of your evening tonight to stop in and join us in some conversation and kind of going over some of the important documents and things that we need to know to help our students prepare for coming back to school in just 1 week. It seems kind of unreal that it's right around the corner. I know Jill and I are excited tomorrow to welcome staff back to the building to go through 2.5 days of training and get them some preparation time before we welcome your students back with open arms on Wednesday, September 1st. So thank you guys so much for taking care of being here and being involved parents. And we are recording this meeting so that we can share it with those families that weren't able to make it to our session tonight in case they want clarification. We've been dropping copies of the presentation in the chat that you may want for later. I will fully admit I get super distracted by the chat when I am presenting and trying to share information with parents. Jill is my amazing assistant principal co-pilot in all things wonderful and beautiful here at Mount Tabor. And she always interrupts me and lets me know when I need to talk about something in the chat. She does a fantastic job. Yes, I can absolutely email out links, Jennifer, and I'll include the links to this slide deck and the link to the video in this week's newsletter as well. So you guys can get all of those things together. Right. So tonight's agenda is really to do a brief overview, though there's a lot of it, so it doesn't feel very brief, but a brief overview of our back to school information, letting you guys know where you can learn more about the overall PPS safety protocols, which are part of our plan here at Tabor, and then really talking about the back to school details that are specific to our building. And it feels like there's a lot. We'll talk about what the first day of school is going to look like for all of our students, and then kind of walk you through what do we need to be doing to help prepare our students before they come to school, what supplies they might need, what are we doing with all those Chromebooks we spent so long on last year, what we can prepare for in regards to arrival and dismissal, bell schedules, the super hot topic of the week, which is lunch and how that's being handled, our plans for homeroom, who you can reach out to for support for yourself or your students, and our upcoming events that are taking place. It's a lot to cover. A lot of this information has been in the newsletter, but as you all know, of late, things tend to shift very quickly. And so some of these points may look a little bit different than what I've been able to communicate with you guys in the last couple of weeks. So hopefully you guys are on the front line of all the brand new information. We're going to take a moment here at the very beginning to kind of check in with you all. I think it's important. I want you to use the chat if you can in your Zoom meeting, and I want you to type 3 words. What 3 words would you use to describe how your student is feeling about returning to school in the next week? And it might be things that you've observed and maybe things that they've shared with you, but we're super interested to hear what are you hearing from your students and how are they feeling? I'm excited to see how many exciteds are in that list. I see the tentativeness, anxious, a little scared and worried. Oh no, dread, sorrow. Dread and sorrow is scary, but hopeful. I've got some hope for. I've got to say, all of these feelings and emotions that our students are feeling and that we're feeling about sending them back are all completely normal and natural. I think all of us had kind of hoped that when we got to this point in 2021, that our students would be coming back to school in ways that we are all used to seeing, unmasked, able to be close to their friends without all of the restrictions that are in place. And unfortunately, COVID had some very different objectives for us this year, in which it's going to continue to ask us to be flexible and adaptable. But I have a lot of confidence, having been with the staff now for a full year and watching what we were able to do collectively together as a Mount Tabor staff, with our student body and with our amazing parents, that we can make this a really successful and wonderful school year for everyone. That being said, if your students are dealing with some stress and anxiety as we move into the school year and we get settled, we do have a slide later on today where we'll talk about some of the supports that may be available for them. And I'm going to really encourage you to kind of watch, wait and see how they're doing. And then if they need additional support, by all means, please reach out to us here at the school to see if we can help calm some nerves for sure. So, as I usually do at the start of our Tabor Talks, I wanted to go over our digital norms for this evening. I think we used these pretty successfully last year, and we always like to set norms for our students as well. And knowing that some of the content we cover in these meetings can bring up a lot of emotions in us as adults, I think it's always good to have some ground rules in place. First of all, please make sure you keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking, and we will have time usually at the end of the meeting if families want to ask questions out loud that Jill and I can respond to. You're welcome to use the chat function, and like I said before, Jill is going to be my amazing co-pilot and let me know if there are things coming up in the chat that I need to stop and pause and address before we move on to the next topic. If you feel like leaving your video on, fantastic. If not, I totally respect that, especially since we are recording this meeting. So feel free to turn it on or off. If you need to make dinner, walk the dog, do whatever it is you need to do, and just be tuning in via audio, totally appropriate. We want it to feel good and comfortable for everyone involved. And then we also ask, and this has always been one of the things that I have so valued about our Tabor community, is that even when things are controversial or tough, we all keep our actions and words appropriate and respectful as we work through this together. And I think that's key. We are working through kind of unknown times together, even this evening, as things continue to shift. So I found this quote the other day. I think I needed it for my own personal grounding as much as I wanted to share it with you guys as well. And so I want to just take a second thinking about: the pessimist complains about the wind, the optimist expects it to change, and the realist adjusts the sails. I used to think I was a real optimist in life, and I think I still am. And I think one of the ways that as a school community, we've gotten through the last 18 months of having our students in various shades of distance learning is to just recognize that things are going to change. And things feel different right now, 18 months later, than they did at the start of the pandemic on March 18th of 2020, when everyone left and started their homeschool comprehensive distance learning experience. I think where we're at right now is a place of real humbleness as a leadership group here at the school, because things continue to change on us on almost a daily basis, in which we are responding to governor's orders. We're looking at Oregon Health Authority numbers. We're adjusting how we do business, how we plan for these things. And so we're going to continue to be those realists and adjust those sails and continue to prioritize your students' health and safety and academic success as we move through this year. And I hope that we all can kind of work our way through these things of like, man, I wish it was different. We all do, and get to the point of, and until it's different, we're going to continue to move together to make that happen. So I know that you all have probably been inundated as have I, from Portland Public Schools. They've been sending out updates on a fairly regular basis as the program has changed in regards to what our health and safety protocols happen to be. I've linked in the slideshow for us a direct link to the Back to School 2021 website from PPS. I'm going to see if it'll actually let me go there. If you haven't had a chance to go and look here, some of it I noticed today as I was looking through doesn't reflect our most up-to-date information in regards to like the change of the outdoor mask mandate that just came through from Governor Brown's office yesterday. But most of it is pretty live and up to date in regards to what we're doing across all of PPS. There's a link to the data dashboard for Columbia County, so you can see what's happening with the rates across the county. But there's also information about all the different layered health and safety measures. People lovingly call this the Swiss cheese model. No, this is our cheese. We're not moving it anywhere. But it does tell you all the different things that we are doing to help support kids in our buildings. And these are across the district. So if you have questions about vaccinations and where you can get them, what the latest mask mandates happen to be, what the rules are regarding physical distance and quarantine, what we've done in the last year in regards to airflow and circulation, all of that information from the district level is housed at this website. They continue to answer commonly asked questions with the latest guidance. And there's links to the standard operating procedures. Those are all the rules and regulations that your building administration and your teachers and your staff are working through to set up our schools. So there's a lot of information there. I know it, Jill knows it. If you've looked at it, you've experienced it too. A lot of it's familiar for those of you that had students back in hybrid. Some things have changed a little bit. But I really do encourage you, if you have questions or concerns about what is happening with masks, what is happening with isolation and quarantine, and how is that handled? These are all district layer questions that the answers for those are here. If we have some tonight, I'm more than happy to answer and direct you to where you can find direct answers as well without question. The first day of school, as we said, for all students, and that is a definite change for us, is coming up next Wednesday, September 1st. We are welcoming our 6th grade students and those students who are brand new to Mount Tabor that would have just transferred in potentially over the summer to join us beginning for actual activities beginning at 9:15 a.m. The doors will open at 9 o'clock and 6th grade students are going to they're not lining up. They're going to come in the 6th grade door. I'm trying to manipulate all the windows on my screen. All 6th graders, when they enter our building, all like fall at least, and hopefully all year, are going to come in this northeast door. This is Ash Street right along the front of the school. The main entry here is for 7th graders. Our 6th graders will enter right here, and our 8th graders will enter at the back of the school, kind of back by the basketball courts and the main parking lot. This is trying to help us reduce the number of students in any one area at arrival time as we get there. We'll open up doors for 6th grade students at 9 o'clock and bring them into the building and into the small gym where we're going to start our activities. Our 7th grade students and our 8th grade students are going to arrive and begin classes at 11:15. And they're actually going to meet their 4th period teachers, either in front of the school, if they're a 7th grader, our teachers will have signs, or at the back of the school, if they're 8th graders. That way, because we know some of our students haven't physically been in the building for hybrid instruction or maybe ever, if they can find their 4th period teacher out front, we can get them to their 4th period homeroom class where we're going to go through some campus tours. We're going to help them orient and work through the map for their schedule so that they've got the skills they need to be able to navigate well. We will also have tables set up at the 7th and 8th grade entries where students will pick up their schedules, their printed schedules if they need them. Students are also welcome if they want, they can take a screenshot from their student view that has the list of their schedule. You can print one out at home, whatever helps to alleviate any of those fears or anxieties coming into that first day. We want to make sure that we help support that. Jill, any questions yet?
Yes, actually, sixth graders only, right? No parents. Oops, it just disappeared.
I got it. No parents entering the building. That is correct. So you're welcome to hang out with your sixth graders over there on the sixth grade entry side. There's a covered area there until we start to open the doors at 9 o'clock to have students come into the building. You're welcome to stay there. But at this point, there are no students coming in the building. Or no students, no parents coming in the building. We will have staff members and our 8th grade web leaders there to help support and move students from that entry point into the small gym to get ready for our activities for the day.
And then Tanya, one more. Can you talk about students who are new to Mount Tabor that might be in 7th or 8th grade joining us too?
Students that are in 7th or 8th grade that are brand new to Tabor are welcome to come at the 6th grade time. I can tell you that all students, regardless of grade level, are going to see some campus orientation. They'll get a tour of the campus, they'll get a campus map and be able to map out their classes. They'll do some community building work in their homeroom classes. What those students may be missing if they don't come at 9:15 as a brand new student might be like the rah-rah sort of outdoor assembly that we have planned and some community building activities in small groups inside classrooms. I'm going to leave it up to parents to decide which of those approaches feels best for their student. Yeah, the parent meeting for 6th grade students is now canceled. We can't have visitors in the building for more than 15 minutes at a time. I'm happy and I'm thinking about trying to host one that's online. It just might not be on that particular morning for our 6th grade families. It's a great question. So what can all students expect for the first day of school? One, they'll be able to pick up a printed schedule and building map at arrival. Our 6th grade students and new students will get their schedules from their web leaders before they actually transition to their homeroom classes. Jill and I and the faculty are working on, we hope, what will be a pretty awesome video assembly to welcome students back. Students, like I said, will go on a campus tour with their homeroom teacher and get help finding their classes and mapping out their routes. And then they're going to engage in some homeroom activities, including some community building activities and getting to know you activities that day. So we have tried to schedule things in ways that really do emphasize community and connection and hopefully alleviating some of the anxiety that's there. All of our students in all grade levels will be eating lunch outside on the grass. And all students will also walk through their schedules and go to their classes in a very abbreviated fashion. So they'll meet all of their teachers for about 16 minutes on that first day. And I think on the next, maybe, oh no, it's not on this slide. 2 slides back from this one, there are linked copies of these first day schedules for each grade level. You'll notice that things happen at different times so that we can accommodate all the different lunch schedules and those 6th grade orientation activities. They're all hot linked. If you just click on the image, it'll open up all 3 of those schedules and you can find the ones that most pertain to your particular student.
Tanya, there's a question. Is there anywhere we can access a building map in advance?
I will attach a building map. Thank you for that ask. I will attach a building map in this week's newsletter for you all. That's not a problem. Let me write a note to myself. It's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Tanya, do you mind talking about students bringing or packing lunch on the first?
Yeah, I can do that. I'm going to see if I can move my slides backwards. Apparently they don't want to very well. As far as the first day, students are welcome to pack a lunch or they are welcome to grab a lunch in the cafeteria. I'm not sure how many parents are aware of this, but school breakfast and lunch is free for all students all year this year. And so if that's something that your student would like to engage with, they are welcome to grab breakfast and lunch here in the building. Those students with their lunches packed will be dismissed directly out to the field to start their lunch. Those students that need to pick up their hot lunch in the cafeteria will work on escorting those students from their classes down to the cafeteria so they can pick them up and then join their classmates out on the field. When we're having lunch outside, and we'll talk a little bit more about it later, students get to choose where it is that they sit, but they need to maintain at least 3 feet of distance from their peers. So one of the resources I was reading was talking about helicopter arms. If you can helicopter your arms around and touch somebody, they are entirely too close to you. I always want to urge students to err on the side of caution and keep as much space as possible while being able to have a conversation with their peers while they're outside. Other things, Jill?
Yep. What if their sibling is then in their homeroom? Can they sit close together?
It makes, I mean, clearly, like at home, that makes sense. They're in the same group, in the same pod, and I get that. It's also really difficult for those of us that are on duty to know who's siblings with whom at all times. So I would say trying to maintain 3 feet of distance makes it so it's clear for everybody that this is what we're all trying to do. So if we can keep those 3 feet, please, please, and thank you. It just makes it easier and is consistent for all. Things that our 6th graders will get on that first day, in those first 2 hours, that our 7th and 8th graders kind of went through some of it in an abbreviated and online fashion last year. But we'll start with a socially distanced, masked outdoor assembly first thing in the morning to kind of get kids in and oriented and pumped up and excited for being here, because it's middle school. We should be excited to be back. They'll also be working with their 8th grade web leaders in small groups in classrooms. The groups that they're in are pretty small. I think they're 10 to 12 students tops in classrooms that are already socially distanced and set up for the school year. Those activities are really focused on team building, community building, connection. And those 8th grade web leaders that our 6th graders are connected to are going to be supporting them throughout the year with web lunches where they can visit with them while they're outside lunching. And oftentimes we do activities with our 8th grade web leaders. What those specifically look like depend on what happens with the pandemic and where we're at with case rates and protocols. But those 8th graders have done a phenomenal job in years past. And I know that Mr. Groom and Mr. Katie Russell and Miss Gray have all been working hard, working with them through training. And I think they started today, and they've got a couple more days to go before we welcome our 6th graders back. And I know they're excited to be able to provide that support.
Tanya, do you know how many people are in each web group?
I think when I talked with Mr. Groom last week, it sounded like 10 with a max of 12. So I think it should be pretty small.
Can parents sign their students out for the lunchtime?
Parents can sign their students out for lunch. We can't keep you from your students, obviously. Please note that especially on that first day, it's going to be a little bit more chaotic of identifying where all of our students are, especially our 6th graders that may be moving with their web groups through a series of activities. So if you're coming to sign your 6th grader out for lunch, please make sure that you're patient with us. It is something that if it's something that you want to do on a regular basis, please note you have to come get them. You can't just like say that you're going to sign your kid out for lunch and they get to walk off campus and go somewhere. So please just work with us if that's something that your family is looking to do.
Tanya, back to lunch for a second. Do you want to talk about the space that we do have for students in the lunchroom? I know we don't have 6.
I've got lunch a little bit later in the presentation. So if you've got general lunch questions, I will totally get to them, I promise, because I know that has been a big topic of conversation. I know in your homes, it's been a conversation in my home with my 7th grader. So I promise we will get there for sure. All right, let's see if I can move it forward. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Okay. Oh, there was one thing. On that first day, minimal things from students that are needed to come to school. If they're packing their lunch or they've got a plan that they want to eat hot lunch, they just need to have lunch with them or know where they're getting it. We ask that they have a filled water bottle. They have a mask, and I always recommend a spare because you never know how sweaty or breathy or whatever your mask may get during the day, and a writing utensil. That's it. They don't need to come with their binders or any other supplies on day one. If they want to store all those things in a backpack, know that they're probably going to be packing that backpack with them all day, because we're not assigning lockers until later in that first week. So very minimal first day. Lunch if needed, water bottle, mask, something to write with, and we can keep it nice and simple. Arriving on campus, there's a few changes to the protocols from the district in regards to the school's role and what we're asking families and students to do. This isn't a huge change, but we're asking for families to daily make sure that they are doing the self-screening checklist with their students in regards to COVID symptoms. There are both primary and non-primary symptoms that you can see listed here that are of concern. If your student is experiencing these symptoms like fever, new cough, unexplained shortness of breath or difficulty breathing, or new loss of taste or smell, please keep your child home and call us here in the office. One of the things that we have to do when our students are staying home sick is we have to track their symptoms as well. So if your student does fall ill, please make sure you call the school and let us know that your child is staying home sick, and our school health assistant or one of our office secretaries or potentially an administrator may be asking you some health screening questions just to see what symptoms are showing up. It's part of our contact tracing protocol here in the building in maintaining and monitoring what's happening with our students and if we're experiencing a rise in symptoms or a potential outbreak. So we really do need your help as parents to help make sure that our students are healthy when they leave your house, and just being in really close contact in regards to those symptoms. Go ahead, Jill. I know there's something going on in the chat. I just can't see it.
This chat is a whole different experience, Tanya.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Will students have their own locker? And yes, let's start.
Students, there are not enough lockers on campus for students to each have their own. They will be assigned a locker partner to share with.
Some folks were under the impression that there would not be a use of lockers due to social distancing, but
when I've checked with the district, we've been asking that question since about the end of July to ask. My understanding at this moment was that locker use was totally permissible because students are there so infrequently with like not a lot of period of contact with the other people around them. Passing periods on a normal day, first day is an exception, they're a little bit longer, are 4 minutes in length. So they're really not in close contact with anybody for a significant period of time that would count as a close contact.
I think that's it for now.
Okay. And we can certainly come back and answer questions or readdress anything that doesn't seem clear, because goodness knows it's not always clear to us straight off the bat too. And if I don't know the answer, I will promise to go find the answer and make sure I include it in the newsletter for you all too. You guys may have heard that the governor has reinstituted outdoor mask mandates starting on this Friday. So I want to make sure that we're aware of what the current policies are. So all PPS staff and partner staff and pre-K-12 students are going to be required to wear masks at school. They are required on school buses, and as of August 24th, masks will be required during outdoor activities as well. That does include recess. The only time that masks are not required is if students are actively eating, drinking, or playing an instrument in the band that requires that they use their mouth. Those are the only 3 instances. So I know that there was a large degree of, I've had several, I shouldn't say a large, I know I've had several questions from families asking, well, can my student be unmasked outside at recess? At this point, the answer is no, unfortunately, due to the governor's mandate. That is a time that they will still be masked while outdoors. We're eating lunch outside, they can take their mask off while they're actively eating. But if they're sitting with the group of their friends after they've finished eating, or they're pausing for a long time between bites in their Cheetos or whatever it happens to be, we're asking that they mask back up just to be safe. That's been the newest guidance, I think, from, was it 2 days ago, Jill? A day ago? It's pretty recent, that change. Up until about a day or so ago, like it was a different story, but this is now where we're at.
Tanya, are masks required during PE? And what if a family member is showing COVID symptoms?
Masks are required during PE. They're not one of the exempt spaces, like literally those three things there: eating, drinking, playing an instrument that requires their mouth are the only 3 times that those masks will come out. If you have a family member that is exhibiting COVID symptoms, it's always helpful to give the school a call so that we know. If you have a family member that your student is living with that is diagnosed with COVID, they are a close contact and they would need to quarantine. We need to know those details as quickly as we can so that we can get you in touch with the Multnomah Education Service District that's providing our school nurse and school health assistants, so that we can identify the quarantine period that's needed and make sure that you all have the support that you need in going through that process.
Will we keep the doors open during PE?
Will we keep the doors open during PE? I know one of the things that we're trying to do is increase circulation in all classes, and if it's appropriate to do so, yes, we will.
Will there be distance learning if a student has to quarantine?
The last I checked on the district standard operating procedures was that they had not yet determined what that protocol would look like. I know that we're having conversations with our staff on Monday of next week and talking about how we can continue to utilize Canvas, at least for students to receive work asynchronously. But at this point, we haven't heard specifically from the district what the plan is should a student need to quarantine. And I think it's something that's going to come up. It's not something that's been determined yet. And I imagine it's something that needs to be negotiated with our labor partners, but that is definitely something I will communicate out to you as soon as we know what the stance is and what parents can expect.
Tanya, do you want to talk about the process for how long a student needs to stay home if they are quarantining?
That is something that is dependent on what we hear back from the MESD. I think current guidance is 10 days that they are home, and then being monitored for symptoms days 11 through 14. I'm hoping. Jill, is there anything else I need to talk about with health stuff before I move on?
I'm sorry, I've got a little bit of glitchiness happening over here.
That's okay.
If a student, it might be best to save some of the questions and go through the rest of your presentation and then answer them at the end.
Sounds good. As far as arriving and pickup from school, last year during hybrid, we worked with Safe Routes to School with the city of Portland to really look at how students are arriving and departing from campus and trying to make the area around campus safer. We'd heard feedback from neighbors and parents that said that in days past, like it was kind of chaotic and a little busy and maybe not the safest environment. We are going to continue moving forward with our transportation plan to try to minimize the amount of traffic, especially in our bus zone in the front of the building. And I know that we've had staff members out trying to help families navigate that change. What we are asking, if you're driving your student to campus, there's a couple of different options that you have. One is that you can use the church up here on Stark Street as a drop and go location. You can pull into the parking lot, drop off your student, and they can walk to the school. If you have bikers, we've tried to outline some routes of how they might most safely get to the 2 bike racks that are on campus, whether they're coming from Stark Street. They get to come down 57th, which we're asking normal traffic not to go down. That should clear that path for them to get around to the back of the school, or have them come up, I think that's 55th, and down Ash Street to get around to the front bike rack here as well. If you're driving your students, please come from the south side from Stark, coming up 55th, and then turn down one of those side streets. We have them labeled by grade level, and honestly, The grade level matters very little in comparison to let's use the side streets to filter traffic that direction. We try to do it that way so that we kind of like balance the congestion that may happen. You can drop your student off at any point on this street or at the corner. At each of these circle locations, we do have a staff member on duty to help students cross 57th safely. And then we ask that you continue out on 57th to Burnside, which you're exiting the school, not turning down the bus zone. I don't know if any of you have tried to get your car through the bus zone with cars parked on the side and buses parked there. And potentially traffic coming the other way. It's not a safe situation for anyone involved. So we're asking our parents' traffic to please avoid Ash Street in the front of the school and to please like exit using 57th out to Burnside. I know it means we have a few more turns that we have to make, but if we all follow the plan, it should help smooth out the traffic significantly. In the last couple of newsletters, you should have received copies of the school supply list. I wanted to briefly clarify because I've had some questions. The column on the left are individual student supplies, regardless of their grade level. So every 6th, 7th, and 8th grader needs to have the following supplies ready for them for the school year. On the right-hand side are specific to grade level and sometimes specific to grade level program. You'll notice in 7th and 8th grade, there are some requirements for students that are in Spanish or in Japanese immersion or that are taking Spanish 1, 2, that they might need some additional supplies. These supplies are individually purchased by families and sent with their students as their own individual supplies. The second part of the supply list talks about community supply contributions. I know in years past, our parents have been able to bring paper bags full of copy paper and tissues and all sorts of other things to the school and drop them off. Clearly, with COVID, this is an additional layer of complication for us. And I think what we're going to need as a school is going to change over time. And I don't know that we can anticipate exactly how many individual glue sticks we're going to need if we're trying to reduce the amount of community supplies that students are in contact with. What we're asking instead is that if you'd like to help support us with the cost of the planners that all of our students are provided, copy paper, which we know we go through, dry erase markers, all of those sorts of things, that as those needs come up, we're asking our families to contribute $15 per student to those community supply costs. It's uploaded in school pay right now. It's a pay as you can. If you can help support us, that would be great. Or if you want to send your student with a check, they can return it to their 4th period homeroom teacher. All students do have a planner that we will be providing for them, probably in the first week of school. And then please ignore the last part of it because we know what our new mask mandates are. This was our old copy. So please make sure that you've got masks for your students as well. Several questions have come up about Chromebooks. I know that you all may be aware that the bond that we passed as a community, part of that was earmarked for improving technology for students. And PPS is deploying 1-to-1 Chromebooks for grades 3 through 12 students this year. They are touchscreen Chromebooks, and they're really excited about the processing power that those have and how they will open up access for students. I've worked with the IT department, and we have a set date for distribution at Mount Tabor of October 20th. Obviously, there are some supply chain issues in all sorts of areas in our society right now. So it is a tentative date. If we can get them sooner, they're going to try to deploy them sooner. Otherwise, that's kind of what we're planning for. From now until those new Chromebooks come our way, we want you to continue to send your students to school daily with a charged device. Many of you may have checked out some of those PPS Chromebooks last year to support your student in distance learning. If that's the case, please send them to and from school daily with that charged PPS device that you used last year. We'll trade those in when we get the new Chromebooks. If you have a device that you're comfortable having your student bring back and forth to school because you do not have a PPS device, and you feel comfortable sending it with your kiddo, feel free to send that Chromebook or laptop with them. Those students that don't have access to either a PPS device that they checked out, or they don't have one at home that they can easily bring to school, or that works for your family, we're going to be surveying students to see what that need is. We do happen to have several of our Chromebook carts still in the building that we used for hybrid checkout last year. And so we're going to be making sure that we check out all of our remaining devices to students so that they have them for the fall. We'll probably be working on that the week after Labor Day. So the first week we won't be needing devices at school. The second week we're going to be asking some questions and seeing if we can get devices into student hands.
Tanya?
Yeah.
What if families did not check out a Chromebook and also don't feel comfortable sending a Chromebook on their child to school?
That's totally fine. We can check them out a PPS one that they can take back and forth. Not a problem at all. That's kind of what we're trying to figure out, because it's difficult to know. Like, we know how many of our students potentially have a Chromebook checked out to them right now, but we also know that there are families that use their own devices at home, and some may feel comfortable sending them and some may not. The word from IT was to check out whatever remaining devices we have in our building to try to meet that need. And I think we probably have 150 plus here in the building. So I'm hopeful, and I'd like to say I'm confident, but I never know what's going to happen. But I'm really hopeful that we'll get them into the hands of everybody that needs one, should they need one come into school.
Tanya, do you know what folks should do if they have a PPS device that needs to be serviced?
They can call the IT help desk, or if you want to send it in with your kiddo during the first week of school, they can drop it off in the office and we can put in an IT ticket to get that device serviced. We'll have to check out a device to them in the meantime to try to help. Or you can always, the BESC is also still doing Chromebook exchange. So if you want to drive to the district office, you can exchange that Chromebook as well.
Is the process the same for returning a Chromebook they don't need anymore?
Yeah, they can bring it back to us here at the school and we can make sure that it is removed from their record. Absolutely.
Do kids carry the laptop in their backpack from class to class?
The kids will carry the laptop with them from class to class, not necessarily in their backpack. My understanding when the new Chromebooks come as well is that they come with some sort of carrying case or bag of some sort. I haven't seen these devices yet, so I'm just operating on what I've been told. If that's the case, students will carry their new Chromebooks in those bags with them over their shoulder to and from class. But we're asking at this time for backpacks to be in lockers.
Would an iPad work for a student to bring to school?
Let me think about that. An iPad may have some limited capabilities. We can certainly try it and see what happens. And if we're running into problems, we can look into issuing a Chromebook. I think sometimes I don't know, it seemed like last year there were some issues with Canvas access or Google Drive access with iPads that weren't as clean as they were with our Chromebooks. So I'm game to try. For sure. We want students with electronic devices so that we can continue to help support them.
For those students bringing their own Chromebooks, could they get one of the recommended carrying cases if they're not allowed to use their backpacks?
I don't have access to the carrying cases, and I think they come with the new Chromebooks. Let me think about how we might be able to support that. Because I know the students that have PPS Chromebooks right now don't have carrying cases for those devices either. They're just going to be trucking around with them under their arm, or most likely shoved in their binder with all their other stuff, if I am really real about middle school students.
Do you know if the Chromebooks are different than the older ones? Are they bigger?
I think they might be a little bit bigger. I know they're touchscreen. I know that the representative I sat with told me a whole lot of great technical stuff that I remember none of, but it sounded really impressive. And they were really excited about the computing power of the new Chromebooks and thought they would really take it's a notch up from, or maybe several notches up from where we were before. That's as much as I know. I'm sorry that my brain does not process computer lingo the way it should to be able to give you a really super thorough answer on that.
Should they bring their chargers?
We want students to charge them at home. I don't think it's a bad idea to bring a charger though, because if their Chromebooks are like my school Chromebook, they die in like 2.5 hours of use if I'm lucky. So I don't think that it's a bad idea to send them with the charger just in case, if we can plug them in a science class or whatever. I don't see that that's a problem.
If a Chromebook was checked out at Richmond Elementary, should they keep it
Keep it.
or should they give it back to Richmond?
Totally keep it for right now. I think everybody's got what they've got. Normally, and I guess this is moving forward, if a student, when students transition buildings, because their new Chromebooks that they'll get in October are going to stay with them for the life of their time in that building. So if you've got a sixth grader coming to us here at Mount Tabor, and they're issued their Chromebook in October, they'll have that Chromebook with them until they exit our building as eighth graders, at which point they'll check them back in, and whatever high school they attend will check out a new Chromebook to them if they're continuing with us in PPS. So I think that's the plan moving forward. Right now, it's like, hold on to your devices, keep them, use them, and then we'll get you your new ones.
Do we expect that students will be on Chromebooks a lot more pre-pandemic? There was very little time spent on computers at school.
I think it's going to be a mix, to be honest. I think there are some lovely tools and ways that teachers have learned to use technology in classes, but I also think, based on the conversations I've had with our staff, that there is a lot of value in students also doing things paper and pencil and doing collaborative activities in class that technology really doesn't support in the same way. So I imagine that parents will see a mix of different types of learning that will take place across even a single class. So I wouldn't expect that all of your kids' work is going to be strictly on a Chromebook, but I do think that we'll probably have more digital resources posted than we've ever had before, especially if we're supporting students that are out due to quarantine or illness or those sorts of things, using that Canvas platform.
That's it for now, Tanya.
Okay, awesome. Last spring, if you were with us for hybrid, students lined up when they got to campus with their teachers to enter the building. We don't need to have quite that same level of security moving in and out of those spaces, though we are asking that students kind of assemble in general grade level areas, not lining up with teachers. On the map that you see, you'll see those 3 different locations that are there for our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students. We're just trying to ask them to socially distance and be in that general area. And we do want them coming in their specific grade level doors. It will help us maintain some of the spacing that we need in the building to have students kind of balanced entering at 3 different points in the building. The cafeteria is going to be open and serving breakfast. It will open at 8:50. Students are going to enter and exit the cafeteria right here where this yellow star is. This is like the small parking lot right off of 57th. This door right up here is right next to the library as well. Students will come in and grab their breakfast and then exit back out onto campus. They can eat on campus. The one thing I will say to parents, if you can help emphasize, I would truly appreciate it, because this is my 4th year as a middle school administrator. I don't know if you notice this in your house, I do in mine. My middle schooler likes to leave garbage everywhere. I don't know who they think is going to come pick it up after them, but especially with COVID, we really need to be careful about touching our own things and putting our own things away. So if we can encourage good garbage can use, especially as they're eating outside in places where it may be easier to abandon trash, the better. But breakfast is pick up and take outside. All of our grade level doors on a normal day will open at 9:05. Students are going to be asked to sanitize their hands, and we're just checking to make sure they've got their masks on and are wearing them appropriately before they enter the building. We are not doing a physical scan for symptoms. We're not taking temperatures at the door. We're asking all students to self-check at home, recognize when they're feeling well and when they are not, staying home when they are not, and then coming in, sanitizing hands, making sure their masks are on and appropriate. So the bell schedule, I'm going to tell you a little bit about, and we'll address what it says about lunch and why that's still looking the way that it does on this schedule. For those of you that are new to middle school, all of our students attend periods 1 through 6 every day. Some students, if they're in an immersion program, if they're receiving special education or English language development services, had an option to sign up for a 0 period class. If you don't have a 0 period on your schedule, that's totally okay. Not every student does. And I think this year it does show up labeled as period 0, right, Jill?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. And those 0 period classes are by quarter. So it's important to note what quarters your student may have 0 period if they do have one. Students will also have a daily homeroom class. It is with their 4th period teacher and their 4th period classes. We're going to ask that students sanitize their hands at a couple of different specific points of the day. 1, when they're entering the building. 2 is going to be prior to lunch. The 3rd is going to be immediately following lunch and recess. And the 4th will be at the end of the day as they exit the building and hop on buses and bikes and walk and hop in people's vehicles. So those are the 4 major times that you can expect and your students can expect that they'll be asked to go through a hand sanitation routine, whether that's hand washing in the classroom. And we're lucky that our classrooms all have sinks in them that can support that, or using hand sanitizer. And I know that our students last year were so fed up with hand sanitizer that many of them may make some additional choices to wash those hands as they enter and exit at those specific times. We do have 3 separate blocks of time for lunch for our 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. This schedule reflects kind of our earlier, I think it was like version 2 of our lunch schedule, in which we were trying to minimize time in the cafeteria and provide for distancing. That's shifted a little bit. However, we are going to leave these in place because we do have to have a plan B for when outside weather is not so favorable to eating in the outdoors. So we're going to leave it as it is. But what I can tell you is that those lunch times, if I looked at the 6th grade lunch, for example, I see that lunch C starts at 12:33 and recess E or recess C ends at 1:07. That would apply to all students. So all students will have lunch and recess from 12:33 to 1:07. All 6th graders would be outside, socially distanced on campus during that time frame, so they can be eating and playing at the same time. So just so that's sort of kind of clear, kind of. I think I told you guys earlier that all of our students qualify for free school breakfast and lunch for the entirety of the year. They don't even have to key in their numbers when they go through the line. They just go through the line and get their lunch. The first 6 weeks at a minimum, we're going to be eating outside in our grade level lunches, and recess will be out there as well. We're asking students to maintain at least 3 feet of space while they're outside. And only have their mask off when they're actively eating, not while they're unwrapping things or talking with their friends. And we're working currently, because things continue to change and shift, on what that plan B is going to be for our indoor lunch schedule for inclement weather and winter weather. But I do know that we will have to have students split into cohorts. And part of that cohort splitting is having stable groups together, so that we can accurately contact trace. And I know that that's not part of the typical middle school experience where we like restrict students to be with specific lunch groups. And I know that I had a really good conversation with our counselors just the other day about how can we help students have some voice within their homeroom classes to make good table groups that are stable that we can work through. And so they're already thinking about what that process would look like. I know right now the guidance is to have 6 feet indoors if you are unmasked and eating. I went through, counted our 28 tables in the cafeteria. I know that we can get easily about 3 feet of space with kids, but there is no way to even get half of any one of our grades in the cafeteria with 6 feet of space between students. You guys are probably familiar with the really long, lovely cafeteria lunch tables. Even at 3 feet, there are 6 students per long, I think it's like a 10-foot, 12-foot, I don't even know, I didn't measure that part of it, table. We can get 6 at 3 feet of distance. So we almost would need double the capacity that we currently have indoors to serve all students with 6 feet of distance. All of us as middle school administrators are continuing to work through it. We've sat through more meetings than I care to talk about, talking about how do we keep kids safe for indoor lunches. We're still working on it. We're still meeting about it. I've got another one on my docket tomorrow afternoon. As we get those plans firmed up, I promise to communicate those out to you as early as I can, and that we will work as dutifully as we can to try to preserve some semblance of normalcy, while making sure that we can accurately contact trace and keep kids safe in the cafeteria. Are there other lunch questions, Jill? There's always lunch questions. It's the most important part of the day.
I will have to scroll back up, so let's come back to it.
Okay.
It was very far back in the chat.
That's fair. While Jill is scrolling through the volumes of chat, I don't know what's happening in the chat. I just see it going on my screen off in the corner of my eye. I'm going to talk a little bit about Homeroom. We are trying to prioritize our students' social emotional well-being, build some classroom and school community, and really find some structures to help support students academically. And there's several different ways that we're doing that using our homeroom model for this year. So all students every day will have a 30-minute homeroom time. It is with their fourth period teacher. So it's with classmates that are stable and with them for the entire year. At the bottom of the screen, you can kind of see what the breakdown is and what your students can expect and anticipate in homeroom. Every Monday, homeroom starts with community circles that our counseling team is working through. They are really prioritizing social emotional well-being, targeting some very specific behaviors, giving students an opportunity to talk to each other and build community with their teacher and with their classmates in that session. Tuesdays are all about academic support. During that time, our students are going to be able to transition to other teachers in their grade level. If they need to retake a test, get additional support, had questions about their math homework from 2 nights ago that they still don't get, they'll have the ability to transition to those spaces and get that support during that time. So it's not the same quite as study hall. I think it would be study hall plus, because we actually are trying to coordinate some specific lessons to help students when they might be struggling or when they need some extension as well. Wednesdays will either be academic support or we're working on equity lessons. We have a really active equity team here at Mount Tabor that has been really invested in helping create lessons for our students. They did a lot of work with it last year in homeroom, and they were super motivated and worked over the summer to put some stuff together as well. I know we're starting the year with talking about identity and norms and how we navigate those in community with each other. So they'll see a combination on Wednesdays. Thursdays, we are still an avid school, and our students are still going to be working on putting together those binders and trying to stay organized. And so we're going to have time on Thursdays for students to get organized and have their binders checked, and also to use Dreambox, which was an incredibly effective online tool that students used last year in their math classes, and they're going to continue to use. It really, I think we were the top user as a school in all of Portland Public last year of Dreambox. We got some amazing data from our students and saw some great growth. And so I know our math team is super committed to continuing to use that, and we're allocating some of our homeroom time to do that. And Friday is labeled Fun Fridays because we hope to have some fun here at middle school, because that's kind of the point. Our individual teachers will be planning events. Hopefully, when we have the ability to assemble in larger groups, we'll be able to do some grade level assemblies and activities during that time as well. We're going to be surveying students about what types of student groups, affinity groups, clubs they're interested in being part of at a grade level, and putting those together so they have the ability to connect with other students during that homeroom time on Fridays. So that's kind of our plan for our homeroom.
Tanya, do you want to talk about lunch and what happens when it gets a little bit colder? Will there be options to eat outside in a covered, heated area?
There is no covered area outside on campus. There's no heated outdoor spaces either. I know that there's been conversation with the district about what about tents. The answer is no. I don't know if there are other plans afoot. in regards to what happens after the first 6 weeks. I don't know if schools are going to be provided funds to do those things. All of our buildings are in such different spaces. Some have covered outdoor recess areas and others like Tabor do not. So at this point, we don't know what happens when the weather gets icky and what happens outside, if we can even continue to offer lunch outside for students, but we're working through it.
Tanya, it sounds like the 3-foot lunch distance is unsafe based on recommendations. Could half the students eat in the classroom?
The problem with the classroom is that we also are contractually obligated to have a 30-minute duty-free lunch for our teachers. And so leaving students in classrooms and leaving teachers there violates their contractual rights to actually be able to have a duty-free lunch because they'd be supervising students. I can tell you right now, based on our duty roster and who's actually free to be able to help with lunch duty, even on a regular basis, we're sitting at about 4 to 5 individuals that are able to supervise 230 students during lunchtime. We finally got word this week after hearing no volunteers that are student facing, that there are going to be some opportunities potentially for volunteers to help with lunch duty if they pass their background check, if they provide proof of vaccination, and if they're supervised by other PPS staff. So that just came out in the last day or two as well. And so we'll have to re-examine that as well. But yeah, there's some structural limitations to being able to eat in classrooms in regards to what we need to provide teachers in the building as well.
Tanya, when the weather turns bad, will the students be able to eat in either of the 2 gyms?
We do have PE classes that are going on 4th period. I think we have a 7th and an 8th grade class. So we would have to work with those teachers and see if we even have that opportunity to do so. I'm not sure what it would look like, but it's one of the things that's kind of on the back burner in my mind that we might be able to. I think what will be hard is the setup and takedown of gym equipment in the middle of the day to be able to support student lunch in those spaces. But if it's something that we have to do, we'll see what we can do. It's something that's on my mind as we go through that planning process. It's not ruled out at this point, but I don't have a definitive yet.
Do you think that there will be any opportunity to raise funds for covered tables in the interior courtyard?
We talked with our PTA about it, and I think it's a possibility, but I think we need to get a really solid plan at this point in regards to what happens in inclement weather and what we're able to staff and support duty-wise. I don't want to find us in a space where we're spending a lot of money for things that aren't actually able to be used. So I know that as we're continuing to plan for what that's like, it remains something that might be an option that we can continue to look at and fundraise for. But at this point, we're not ready to move forward with it.
Will 2 questions for 8th graders. Will 8th graders be able to take a mask break since they have their lunch 4 hours after coming into school? And will there be an opportunity for 8th graders to have snacks since they have lunch late?
So mask breaks, not going to be something that's going to happen for any of our students. As far as snacks are concerned, it was surfaced earlier this week, and I don't know how we actually do that for that number of students. At this point, like we've had it as a conversation. I don't know that it's something that can be equitably and across the board applied in all classrooms. Because if they unmask in classrooms to eat as well, those classrooms are set up for 3 feet, and we're in a scenario that's very similar to what we saw, what we planned for in the cafeteria that didn't meet the current standards. So there's a lot of barriers there as well that we're still talking through and thinking about, but mask breaks are not going to be something that's going to happen right now, thanks to the new governance about outside contact, and what we've been told from PPS is the standard operating procedure is that students will be masked unless they're actively eating, drinking, or playing an instrument.
Tanya, do you want to talk about filtration in the school?
So last spring, sure. Last spring we had HEPA filters placed in all of our classrooms, and those filters have been replaced over the summer. I know they've also, with the HVAC system in the building, replaced filters and changed the change those out to be more effective. I know that they're still running those systems early in the day and later at night to increase the airflow. We're encouraging staff when they come back they have exterior windows to keep those open so that we can increase the airflow. All of those are outlined on the PPS website that I showed you guys at the beginning of the presentation too. And those are the universal standards that all of our buildings are, set up for the fall.
What about for science room, which don't have any windows?
So the science rooms are bigger. They should have multiple HEPA filtration units in them because they're based on square footage.
I think all of our science rooms actually have windows.
I'm thinking about it and I don't know. I know there are a couple of rooms on my mind. I think I know of 3 that don't have windows, but those are the only 3 that I know of. But I don't think any of them are science rooms either. So
yeah. Questions about DeRocher's. I know she does prop open her door sometimes for air ventilation.
Yeah, she absolutely does. And I think hers has that funky roll up thing to the back with doors. Like there's something weird that happens at the back of her space with storage space, and like there's some ventilation that can come from the outside in.
Any discussion on safety precautions for band?
I believe that they're the same precautions as last year. I know that there were some personal protective equipment supplies. I know that the size of that room will definitely hold way more than the number of students that are signed up for it, so that they actually could get a good chunk of distance, potentially up to 6 feet between students in some of those classes. So I know that band is one of those exceptions of when masks can be off is in that space. And I know that Jacob Soto, our band teacher, is super committed to making sure his kiddos are safe in that space.
I think that's it for now.
Okay. Jill and I have spent a lot of time going through our parent and student handbook. It is now available. Whoops, there was supposed to be a picture there, but maybe not. It is now available at this link that's here, but it's also posted on the Mount Tabor Middle School webpage. We will be sending out a separate communication to families next week with our digital back to school packet that will have links to the parent and student handbook. It will have the agreement forms, information for walking field trips when and if those are possible for us to do again. All of that information will be there in that one packet. We definitely encourage families to sit down and read through the handbook with their students so they understand what the policies and regulations are here at Mount Tabor. It's always helpful when we're having a conversation with the family if we're all coming at it from the same angle and we understand what those expectations were up front. Your students will be going through sections of that handbook with their classes during the first couple of weeks of school, highlighting some of the most important language that's in there. But we definitely want our parents to be involved in that conversation as well. So you're getting an early advanced link to it here in this slide deck. And I just posted it this evening on the Mount Tabor website. So you can grab it from either spot and go ahead and look through it. There definitely are some changes that are in there. And one of the ones that I think Jill and I are most proud of is making a pretty substantial change to our PBIS language. And for those of you that don't know, because we have so many acronyms in education, PBIS is positive behavior interventions and supports. And it's one of the things that we look at as a school to figure out how do we positively impact student behavior. And so in the past, we had the following slogan, you may be familiar with it: be safe, be respectful, be responsible. A lot of schools use that language. We had some really good communication with our equity team and as a staff last year about looking at the inclusivity of that language and trying to figure out if that's really what we wanted to put forward. As a result of several meetings and back and forth with our staff, we've kind of changed our approach and we feel like it more philosophically aligns with our restorative justice practices and principles that we really believe in. And so right now it's a Mount Tabor students care for ourselves, for each other and for our community. Those are our three major kind of tenets. So when you come into the school next, you'll see posters up in the hallways that outline those expectations and what those look like at recess, in the cafeteria, in the hallways. And we're asking our teachers to think about those as they're framing their classroom expectations and working with your students on those. We also really wanted to emphasize the idea that we are constantly, as adults and kids, in a state of learning, and that we have to practice good habits and we have to learn. And that doesn't mean that we're always perfect in the route to get there, that we fumble and we fail, and we're going to fail forward when those opportunities come up. So we really wanted to emphasize this idea of practicing these skills, of following directions, practicing body and voice awareness, patience, empathy, and responsible electronic usage. I'm going to give mad shout out here to Miss Jill Little, because she is like the PBIS queen of Mount Tabor Middle School. If you didn't know, she is the most positive and lovely human being, and has done a fantastic job in putting together lessons for students for the first couple of weeks of school, in which they're going to explore these different things that we're going to practice, with some great hands-on activities, some things to reflect on and think about as we go through. I just wanted to make sure as parents that you were aware of this shift in language for us and where we're moving as a community. And we definitely welcome your feedback as well. I know I'm excited about it, and I think our staff is too, because it feels really responsive and inclusive of our students. As we wind up, I want you to know that there are so many people here at Mount Tabor that are here to support your students and to support our families. We are so fortunate to have all three of our amazing counselors that we had last year back with us, and they are looping with their students. So if your kiddo was a sixth grader last year and is going into seventh grade, Miss Hillary Smith is still your person. Miss Emery is looping with her seventh graders that are now eighth graders, and Mr. Katie Russell is picking up our brand new sixth graders, and he'll be along for the ride for their entirety of their career here at Mount Tabor Middle School. It really allows our counselors to get to know students and their families incredibly well, so that we can really support them. We're also really excited to bring on Maureen Brennan as well. She is our school social worker. We actually share her half-time with Lane Middle School. She comes to us with a ton of experience and is really connected to the community and the ability to leverage community supports and support our families in supporting our students. So if there is something that you need, if your student needs some support, an ear to listen, if they're working through anxiety, if there are things happening in your household and you need a little bit of extra help or support, you have an amazing team here at Tabor that are willing and ready to help y'all out. I've linked all of their email addresses down below, and I know I'll be including a blurb in this Friday's newsletter as well from our counseling team with some more information about how families can reach out to them and the types of services they provide. So I really hope that you do take advantage of their presence in your students' lives.
Tanya, a couple questions that came up.
Sure.
Talking about safety, what happens whenever students continually don't wear masks properly?
Well, I mean, there are clear protocols in place to talk through that. I will tell you from my own personal experience with hybrid last year here at Mount Tabor, it was not an issue. And I think Jill would have my back on that one as well. Students were incredibly respectful about the need to wear masks and to wear them properly. I think there were only a couple of times that when a mask slipped down, we had to remind a student to pull it back up, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, Miss Arnold," and up it went. Like, our students are remarkable about it. We try to do those gentle nudges and reminders to them. I don't think we encountered anyone that was absolutely defiant, absolutely not. Just like any protocol that we have in place for student safety in the building, we're going to start with conversations with the student. If we don't have compliance, we're going to bring in parents and work and problem solve this together to move us there. And if those things still aren't happening, like, clearly we have to reach out for additional support outside of our building to see what are our next steps, because we need to be responsible to keep all of our students safe. It's not something that's going to be taken lightly, and it is something that we will address every time we see it with students. But like I said, that was not our experience in the spring at all here in the building. with over 500 students back in classes.
Can you talk about our nurse at the school, COVID testing, and what will be happening with the school and testing?
Okay, so there's a couple of things in play. We do have a new school nurse. Her name, I'm trying to remember her last name off the top of my head because I just found out her name last week. Katrina is her name. She is with us 1 day a week. We have a school health assistant. I believe her name is Julia. I think Julia is back with us this year. She's with us every single day here at Mount Tabor. Both of them are trained to administer the COVID diagnostic tests. Those are for symptomatic students or staff members that have expressed permission from their parents to receive testing. Those testing permission forms will be coming home with students the first week for families to fill out. There are others of us in the office, myself included, that are trained in the administration of those exams should students be symptomatic, and we have parent permission to do so. I was in conversation with my senior director, Kristen Westfall, just earlier this evening about there's a new program for a screening test for COVID that ODE and the Oregon Health Authority are talking with schools about. I know that there's ongoing conversation right now with the district office in regards to what that will look like. That hasn't been talked about with administrators yet, and what that approach will be and what we need to plan for with those screening tests. But I do know it's something that's being talked about right now at the district level, and I'll be sure to share that information with families as soon as we get it. Those screening tests are like asymptomatic on a regular basis at school. I'm not sure what the stance is with PPS and what that will look like in buildings, but I'm sure that we'll hear about it more in the coming weeks. Jill, if you're talking, I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Okay.
What happens if a child or a student or a teacher tests positive? Will folks be notified?
So what ends up happening if we have a positive case, there's administration in the office that we go through, one, a symptom tracker, and then we have a whole support team from the MESD and the district office that helps us go through and identify what classes did that student attend, who were they in contact with at lunchtime, to understand like what's the spacing, were their masks on and off, like how long were they in contact, and then we contact those close contacts of that student. What the response is from there varies depending on vaccination status, and that's where we really rely on our partnership with the MESD and those nurses that are there to help us sort through the information for each of the close contacts from that positive case to make decisions about quarantine, length of quarantine, welcome back in the classroom. I know that the current guidance says, and I know this specifically for staff, and I imagine that may be similar for students as well, is that if staff or students are fully vaccinated, and that means like 2 weeks after the second round, if you're on that 2-shot vaccination schedule, that there would not be a need to quarantine just to monitor for symptoms because of that vaccination. Those students that are not vaccinated would still have that quarantine period based on date of exposure, testing, all of those sorts of things that are in place. So there's very clear protocols. There's lots of forms, conversation, communication back out to our families of those that are close contacts to the individual that's been impacted. And I think there's general conversation that goes back out to the community as well. I don't know what it looks like yet. We haven't had to deal yet with a positive case on campus.
Tanya, do you feel the school is operationally prepared to switch back to remote learning if the governor orders a switch back to distance learning?
My personal opinion, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, this staff was remarkable last year. And I think if I had to come to them and say, guys, look, this is where we're at and we need to pivot, they would do it. They know the routines, they know how to use the software. We're in such a different space right now than we were a year ago. And I'm so confident in their abilities to do that. So if that happens, I think we're ready.
What happens if a student is symptomatic but tests negative?
If they're symptomatic, we would still like do the symptom tracking protocol. If they're still experiencing symptoms and they're sick, they have to stay home because that's what like if you are exhibiting these primary symptoms or some of these other secondary symptoms, if your kid is sick, they need to stay home regardless of a COVID test, especially if they're exhibiting those symptoms.
I think that's it for now, Tanya.
Okay. Alrighty. I have a couple of upcoming events to talk to you about. Jill's going to talk to you about one of them. She's super excited about it. She's like the organizational queen of this event.
I was kind of like, wait, what am I doing?
Like,
but I got you.
So Saturday, Jill, what are you so excited about with Saturday?
I am so excited about this project, and I really apologize that I will not be in town for it, but it is the project Community Care, which really basically is taking our school grounds and cleaning them all up and making it look awesome. So I put together a list. I walked around the grounds today. We have a list of all of the areas that we really need a lot of hands to tackle and try and make our school look spiffy for all of your kids to walk into. So if you were free on Saturday morning between the hours of 9 and noon, it doesn't have to be that whole time. It can be an hour in that block. It can be a half hour in that block. We would love to see you, and we are also in the need of garden yard tools. So check out that list and stop on by.
We're asking the people, of course, because it's outside still. We're going to be masked, socially distanced, and like making things look beautiful for our students that are going to be spending their lunch and recess time outside in a more significant way than they've ever spent outside before. And we're really excited to be able to have our families back on campus to help support it. And we really want the building to look amazing when your students come back through the doors. I know the bark dust arrived today and is already out front, taking up space on the sidewalk, and we're ready to spread it and get the weeds out. First day of school is, of course, Wednesday, September 1st for all students. We have Labor Day coming up on Monday, September 6th. It's a no school day. School pictures. I'm so excited. They're back and they are happening on Friday, September 17th. Your students should be coming home in the first week with their school picture packets for you so we can get back into that amazing routine. And then back to school night is on the calendar for Wednesday, September 29th. And we have been told that all of our back to school nights are going to be virtual. Jill and I are hoping that we don't break the internet this year like we did last year when Google completely died in the middle of our back to school night. So if you can keep a good intention for both of us, I think we'll still manage to have an amazing time with it and not hurt Google in the same time. I will tell you too that we're doing a much better job of keeping the school calendar up to date on the Mount Tabor Middle School webpage. So if you want to know, like, when is their site council team meeting and what's happening? Like, as soon as we know events, we're putting them on that calendar in a really easy fashion. So you don't have to wait for my newsletter every Friday. You can check out the events at any time on the Mount Tabor Middle School webpage. And I linked it there for you.
Tanya, could we clarify the back to school night? Is it the 29th or the 30th?
It is Wednesday, the 29th, because I don't remember what school had moved theirs to the 30th and we couldn't do it. So we had to move it back to Wednesday, the 29th. We were doing the 30th, but now it's the 29th because I don't remember if it was Atkinson or Richmond or one of our feeders had it on the same night, which isn't going to work for anybody.
All right. So if you have a friend who read the chat earlier, but has now popped off the meeting and they plan to come on the 30th for the virtual back to school night, hopefully you can tag them into the 29th.
And we'll continue to put it in the newsletter, and I know we'll record it like we normally do anyway, as long as Google doesn't break. Life is good. That being said, you guys have hung on a whole extra 23 minutes in this meeting that has just gone on forever. My apologies for the length of it. I know there's a lot of information, and I know you guys had some amazing questions. I appreciate you feeling comfortable and confident asking them of both Jill and myself. Know that we're here for you. If questions come up, please, by all means, feel free to email us or reach out. We really are here to help support you guys and your kids, and we're excited for an amazing start to the school year with all of you. If you have questions, you're welcome to stay on the line. Otherwise, I'm going to bid you all a very lovely good night, and we'll see you all and your kiddos. Oh, so excited on Wednesday next week.
Bye, everybody.
Take care.